Okay, everybody, welcome back to Your Crisis Coach with Scott, amazing H. Silverman, and myself, Fred Carroll. How are you today, Scott?
Well, I had a whole rant, Fred, but I'm just going to go with doing well. The stuff at the house is almost done now, so we're kind of sleeping regularly and not unpacking as much, and that's good. We had our floors and did some painting, Brady, that we've been dreaming about for 15 years, and just finally got it done, and all at one time. Had to move out for a couple of weeks. It was great. My oldest has COVID, and my youngest just warned us that she's got a big job, not to expect to talk to her till November. So it's been an interesting week. So only half of my parenting is underway, which is good. And Michelle's doing well. And I got my order of books in the garage ready to go. And the marketing starts in about 10 days. So I'm
best-selling author Scott H. Silverman.
Yes. Well, we'll see. Well, if you ask like that, we sell them in bundles of 100, and we give you a discount. No, we'll do something. We'll get something in your hands, and I can
Real
always
good price.
Yeah, real good price. Somebody asked me, he goes, "How are you going to bundle sell this?" I said, "I don't know yet. I haven't figured that part out. Just getting a book done takes a little bit of work. I mean, Fred's done 17 books, so he does one a week. He's much better at it than I am. So, what's up with you, Fred? What's new with you?"
Nothing's new, just doing my thing, keep producing. Don't worry, it's nice. My daughter calls every now and then and stops by when she needs to do laundry. All the good stuff. My son never calls still, but I'm going to see him in 2 weeks.
Does he take your calls when you call him?
Because he's in Salt Lake City, he's 2 hours. I think that's 2 hours from me difference. I never seem to, he takes it, but it's like a 2-minute conversation. Yeah. It's a relationship. It's a strain. He listens to the show though. He knows.
Yeah. Do you want me to talk to him?
No,
sure?
Because he doesn't listen anyway. He's a grown man at this point. Well,
I'm a crisis coach. I can convince him of something. Maybe to hate you more for interfering.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. You got a guest today. A guest
we have a guest today. Brady is somebody, I think, if I'm not mistaken, we met on LinkedIn, and you're doing some impressive work, and sorry for your loss and what you've been through. And one of the things that my second book, The Opioid Epidemic, I'm very passionate about is the opioid crisis, and I've become a nationally recognized subject matter expert. Don't ask me why, but I just have, and because I've spent so much time with it. And the book came out 3 years ago, and I'd spent about 3 years working on it. And I'm a person in long-term recovery, also a retired unlicensed pharmacist. So I've been around that part of the world, and I understand how these things, work. What I don't understand is why we're not able to get enough information out to help people make more informed decisions. And I don't know the details of your story, but you're here to tell us about that, and want to welcome you to the show. And I'd like you to, if you don't mind, just tell us whatever it is you think we want to know, and know that. Okay, well, the mic's all yours. I want to share something with you because you made an interesting point. I am in the treatment world. I'm also in the recovery world, and well, it was about I think 14 years ago when I first heard the term accidental overdose. And being somebody who suffers from the disease of addiction, I thought, why would someone? How could someone accidentally drink too much or smoke too much? Or I'm in Southern California, San Diego, where the old used to be called the methamphetamine capital of the world. And what I learned, is the one pill can kill concept that when I heard about Skittle parties and I heard about young people who would go to a party, never had had any contact with anything other than maybe beer or marijuana, and somebody would, ring the bell, and everyone would go to the bowl and pick up a pill. And what we know today, at least in our community, 95% of the illicit drugs are laced with fentanyl. And fentanyl really wasn't a conversation 15 years ago. It wasn't something that people were accessing. It was maybe other opioids. Oxycontin was really big, obviously, and heroin's really been big. But fentanyl really wasn't a big conversation. And then all of a sudden, we'd see, kids at a party, 18, 19 years old, maybe 20, 21, 22. The age has really lowered. All of a sudden, 8 or 9 people, young people were dying from the event of just taking a pill that was disguised as something else, like Xanax and things of that nature. So, and to be honest, as a treatment provider and as an interventionist, I don't see a lot of fentanyl because people don't make it to treatment. It's other drugs they're addicted to. It's pretty rare. And I know a lot of people in recovery, and I know a lot of people I'm trying to help get into treatment. And I've also learned that education and prevention is so critical. And to your point, that old campaign, this is your brain on drugs, the egg being fried in a pan, and that, you have to be careful. But no one saw this coming. When I first sent my book out, 3 years ago to all 50 governors, and everybody in this country has got an issue, and it's really growing internationally now. And the cartel is really aggressive, really aggressive. I just heard 3 weeks ago from an expert that they have 200,000 people working for the cartel just around the fentanyl opioid distribution internationally and manufacturing. So they're not about to shut it down. They don't really care. China makes the precursors. So anyway, I could go on, but I would just want to make sure you know that I know that the biggest killer now of 18 to 45-year-olds is fentanyl, opioids, and probably the majority of them are accidental overdoses. And you would think, how can this happen in today's world? Well, peer pressure, people push things. You're having a bad day. A friend you trust says, "Hey, you're going to try one of these." So to your point, and how. And I think you've probably have run into some things. What can we do as a society? What can we do as a country? Because I don't, the government's not going to fix this. In my opinion, the huge amount of money that's going on, when you talk to people that have been around, back in the days when cocaine was really big and Colombia and the money and the payoffs domestically. I'm not saying that the government's taking money for it, but the lobbyists that are being paid, the criminal justice side, when you see these pharmacies that were selling tons of Oxycontin and getting away with it, and they were told not to be interfered with by their hierarchy because there's so much money involved. So tell us from your perspective what you've learned. What do you, other than telling a mom or a dad, follow your kids around? I was a drive-by parent. I used to be one of those parents that drive to a party and make sure my kids got out at a decent hour, and they never knew it. And I was a helicopter parent, and my kids know my story. They never saw me loaded, but they knew my story. But there's a lot of pressure when you're at a party, especially if you've had a couple drinks, and somebody says, "Hey, I got some Xanax in my parents' medicine cabinet."
So Brady, first of all, what's your son's name? Jack. Okay, so you mentioned a few things there, and I think you nailed it on the head. Why a lot of parents, I'm just trying to put myself in that moment at least. I can't put myself in your shoes, but if that had happened to me, would I be a advocate and start talking about it and stuff? And I understand how sad it is that you will be lumped in it automatically the minute you start saying, even though he wasn't an addict, they lump him in, and then the parents have to live with the fact. People start. It's just such an issue that we deal with. Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. I could see it as a challenge, but I'm so glad that you are speaking about it because yeah, the government's not going to make this a priority. They'll tell you what you want to hear, but Scott and I have talked about this for 6 years now, and it's the same every week. The show is the same. You know, the numbers aren't changing necessarily. They might even be worsening, and that's not our fault or their fault, but nothing's changing. And we know that people don't vote on this stuff, first of all. So it's not big on the campaign trails. Nobody cares for these people because they all get lumped into that one pocket of addict, disposable. Just homeless people get lumped in without knowing their story, the true story. Not everybody on the street living homeless wants to be there. Not everyone, some of them were forced there. There's real reasons they're there, but it doesn't get fixed. And that's for the veterans on up, on down, I mean. And it is sad. It's quite sad.
You know, the and I have so many statistics. I won't throw them out there, but nobody invites me over for dinner anymore because they don't like my subject matter. Yeah, by the way, speaking of dinner, happy Rosh Hashanah. Today is the first day of Rosh Hashanah. It's the holiest week of the year for us, Fred. And in 10 days, Yom Kippur comes, the holy day, holiest day of the year, where we get to atone for our sins. And my list has gotten shorter. I don't know if it's because I've got onset of sometimers or I'm just older and can't remember, but it's a special time. I just got asked to go into the studio yesterday, and I don't know, I'll get in trouble. I made an excuse not to. They want me to come in and talk about why overdoses are reducing or have been reduced. And, naloxone's been really helpful, but RFK wants to get rid of naloxone and, Narcan and doesn't want to distribute it because he doesn't think it's a good tool. But, when I first started talking about this, we talked about a plane crash every day of people dying in this country. And now it's north of 400. And that number gets determined by the autopsies that happen. And if there's another substance in someone's body that's greater than the opioid, they don't call it an accidental death. They call it a death from overdose of methamphetamine. And you said a lot of parents, when this happens to their child, they don't want to tell anybody. And suicide among young people is growing, so they don't want to talk about it because the stigma is still there. Statistically, only 15% only 15% of our country suffer from the disease of addiction. So the majority of the 400, if you will, in my opinion, are accidental and totally preventable. But when young people think they're invincible, and and I love what it was the DEA that came up with the concept of one pill can kill, and I thought it was a great one-liner. And you're right, in 5 years, because I've been at this now, this specific topic, almost 15, it's just grown so quickly, and the cartels have now started manufacturing fentanyl with a less toxic mix. They're adding a plastic material with it. So they're slowing down, if you will, the morbidity rate by making a less deadly dose of fentanyl because they want to keep the distribution up. It's sick, but well, it's a true fact. I have a good guy. He was just on here with us a few weeks ago, Michael Brown, who is retired DEA, and he's part of the international network that meets globally to talk about best practices and current data and what's taking place. And he's the one that told us about the 200,000 people. Because I said, what's it going to take to encourage the cartel to maybe, you know, make something else that they can make money with, or just stop killing people? And he said 200,000 people, they're not going to quit. They're one of the larger corporations globally right now, and they don't have stockholders, and their ROI is so great. And the fact that it's a synthetic, and kids can get a hold of it on the dark web pretty easily. So they're changing their dosage because they realized their product was killing so many people. Because that was a question I was asked for a decade. Why wouldn't someone sell something that would take someone's life? And money is the only. Yeah, absolutely. Agreed. So my point to this is, and to talk to kids, you've got to be on their platforms. You've got to be on social media. Their influencers have to be talking about it. And, every time a movie star or a sports figure, they're talking to the mainstream media if they'll listen to them, and some go out and speak, not many, but some do. And there's no way, I've tried for years. How do we get families like yours? And I probably know 50 of them, or have met them over the years that have had this kind of catastrophic, horrible event. And they're not even talking to each other unless they are right in the same community and it happened at the same event, or they're in the same PTA or the same high school. So it's a tough one because nobody wants to talk about it. And when I talk about it, we've got to talk about it like the weather. We've got to talk about it like we did with COVID, where we got real-time data and every community was on it. And cause overall, if you think about the numbers, it's probably north of what COVID did to us. And leadership, when it first started, didn't think it was going to go away. So how do we convince them? And I know of about 3 politicians who have had this in their family. A mayor, I think, down in Atlanta lost his son, but they didn't talk about it for a couple of days, and it was gone because I kept looking for it. I'm on all the feeds that I can about this, so it's frustrating for me. I really feel bad that another family has to go through this, and they shouldn't have to. I mean, somebody who's driving around under the influence who runs into somebody is one thing, and we're still seeing DUIs really high. So I don't know what the answer is, and that's part of the reason I do this with Fred, and Fred does this with me, is get people together to talk about it, and then hopefully we'll start to build our base, and maybe somebody will hear the message and go, I thought I heard something. I'm going to sit down with my kids, but I'm not going to do that till I call Scott and we set up a plan. Because, as a parent, when you sit down with your kid and go, I don't think you should do that. And when I was told that, my first book's called Tell Me No, I Dare You. And a lot of that experience came from people telling me you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. But in my day, drugs weren't killing people. You really had to go out of your way to hurt yourself. I mean, heroin, wasn't even killing people back in the day. It still isn't, like fentanyl. So, and this new, what's the new one called? Nitazene or Nitazon? They say it's, yeah. Do you know what fentanyl was originally created for, by the way? Yeah. For for cancer victims, for pain. And they said it would never, ever, ever, ever leave the hospital. It would only be used in an IV delivery system. And all of a sudden, Oxycontin took off. And then when Oxycontin was kind of taken off the market, that's, I think, if you put those two dates together, that's when fentanyl really became very popular because it was a replacement. And nitazene, well, that's the isn't that the elephant tranquilizer? I think that they mix in Philadelphia, I believe, has that going on. I don't know exactly where that comes from, but I was surprised too when I heard it. How can somebody make something that much stronger when our studies show that opioids don't really treat pain long term? And we haven't
It's all
found any.
escape, Scott. It's all an escape route for most people are using these, even the ones that use defense. I mean, we've talked to so many people. It's so sad to hear them, but we know that an addict on the street is using the fentanyl test strips to make sure the drug has fentanyl in it, not to make sure it doesn't. They want it. They're addicted to it. They're so hooked to it, but it solves that immediate issue with them. It does, but obviously creates more.
Let me push back on that for a second, Fred, because I'm a old homeless provider. I still work my street ministry, so to speak, and talk to a lot of people coming out of jail and prison and in recovery. And regular drug consumers, if you will, I don't want to say they're smarter than the average person, but they're getting the test strips because they want to know if fentanyl is in their methamphetamine. They want to know so they don't overdose. And they're the ones that, when you talk to a group of people on the street that are walking around with fentanyl and also have Narcan or naloxone on their person, that's very unusual. It's kind of like someone like me who used to drink Southern Comfort, carrying around a pill to make me throw up if I was, too drunk so I could drive home and not get stopped. So it's kind of insane, but it's happening in the streets now, not in general, but in the homeless communities, because they think they're being poisoned. So they're being more careful than the average person would. And if you're at a point where you're testing the drugs you're taking, you probably should use some good common sense and maybe have another drink.
I'm going off of our buddy there. What's that guy's name in Arizona that you're friends with that does the videos? We've had him on our show. He was a cop and then an addict, and then now he goes on the street and records people overdosing and talks to them.
Now, who is that?
Brock.
Oh, Brock.
Yeah. Yep, Brock. And he's the one that was mentioning how, he was talking to because he physically goes up and introduces himself to addicts and talks to them on the street. And they're so hooked on the blues and hooked on the fentanyl at this point that they're looking for the fentanyl and this is in Phoenix, I believe, right? Where he is or wherever. But that's where I got that information from.
Right. And and Arizona being a border town, Tucson's right across from the border and Nogales is down there as well. Stuff that's coming through Mexico that's been processed, it's weaker, but still you don't build up a tolerance to fentanyl. Fentanyl is one of those drugs that, to your point, Brady, that, just a tiny, it's like a pinpoint, not even a pinhead, a pinpoint of dust will potentially can kill you and does many cases. So the idea of how prevalent it is, and yet, they keep talking about shutting off the borders and fentanyl is still getting in. I mean, it comes in through FedEx, it comes in shipping containers, it comes in through UPS, and then they were blaming Canada, and I think Canada picked up 35 tons last year, and I think their borders are a lot tighter than our Mexican borders because the volume of traffic is so much lower. So we know what the problem is. It's a dangerous narcotic that's a poison. So how do we convince families to understand that the stigma is that it's the stigma that the drugs can kill, and it's not something that happens over time, it's episodic, and that prevention and education really has to be something important. When I hear about a 9, 10, or 11-year-old who wanted to be like their older sibling and took one of the pills and overdosed and died. It just, it's heart wrenching. It's just horrible because, kids want to be like their older brothers and sisters. I never did, but because they never really did drugs. So it is baffling to me, continues to be baffling to me. And I go to my recovery meetings and I talk about this when I share, and I'm not supposed to, but I know most people are poly drugged today that are actively using. They don't just drink or just do this. They do this and do that. And if, 25% of our kids are on some prescription medication right now, things aren't getting better. And COVID threw our kids into an area of quiet time alone, which is really scary. We won't see the effects of that for probably 5 more years. COVID. Yeah. So your boy was a thought leader in his senior year of high school. That's amazing. Well, he'd been thinking about it though. Yeah.
So how could people find Happy Jack? Well,
I,
what is it? What is it that you need for to continue it?
Well, let me challenge you then, and it's also an invitation. Since it's Rosh Hashanah, so if I screw it up, I can atone in 10. I would um, and Fred will tell you this is not something I do. I would be willing, but you'd have to ask me for help. And if you ask me for help, I will help you. Now, you may think, well, what can you do for me? I don't know. But if somebody's willing, and with my background, I'm pretty confident we can come up with some ideas and some thoughts. I'm also on a national Rotary board of directors. It's called a Rotary Action Group, whose primary mission is to help eradicate the opioid crisis domestically and then going internationally soon. And I'm only on that board because, well, they asked me, number one. And number two, everybody, there's lawyers and there's thought leaders and a couple of doctors, but I bring that practical experience. So if you email me and say, I need help, we'll set up a Zoom, you and I, and whoever else you have in your passion. I call the passionate stakeholders, probably you, but you impact. Well, there are people. Well, just so we're clear, I'm not suggesting that you work harder. I'm just saying that there might be um, some caveats.
It's very sweet, Scott. I like seeing sweet Scott.
Shy.
No, she is not shy.
Well, and what I've learned about life, and I'm much older than you, is I don't know what I don't know. And with a little bit of reflective thinking, you may be amazed because you say you're working alone, but trust me, there are people in your inner circle that are probably afraid to establish eye contact with you. And what we want to do is make them comfortable. So instead of being concerned, we'll give them a mission. We'll give them specifics. We'll ask them for, I call it the three T's: time, talent, and treasury. And everybody can give one of those three. Fred, are you doing that with the balloons?
That's not me, baby. That's you.
Really?
You said something. You said a magic word and balloons went off.
Oh, okay. So time, talent, and treasury are three words I learned a long time ago when it comes to fundraising. And it's not about money. It's about sometimes just connecting with others who, there's my group, we meet every month talking about the settlement money that's coming out of, from the Sackler family. And most of that money is going into counties to build new buildings or backfill budget shortages. It's not going to, and there's a specific line item, and they're talking about prevention and education, but the counties technically already do it. So they don't take the new money and put it towards more of that, even though science says long term, Fred, we've talked to Rocky Heron. Rocky Heron's a retired DEA guy who's spoken to nearly 300,000 kids around the country. And he only gets to go where he goes once because they don't want to necessarily bring him back. And I remember he fought for 10 years. I saw him in a council one day presenting, and I walked up to him and I said, Rocky, you don't know me. My name's Scott Silverman. It was our what was it called? The Prescription Drug Abuse Task Force. They've changed the name now. And I said, would you like a hug? This is a DEA guy that worked with the cartels down in South America. He was a pretty tough dude. And he goes, yeah. And now he works for the county of education in San Diego, but half time, and he gets to travel around the country. And he gets invited. Now he's speaking to higher level criminal justice people and kids, and he's bilingual, so he goes to Mexico a lot.
Where
I
is that?
actually
Excuse me, Scott. Where's that music coming from? Did
not me.
anybody hear? Oh, I was wondering where. Yeah, I was. No, no. Yeah, that's fine.
Well,
I
if
just
you're
didn't.
hearing
I
it and
thought I.
I'm hearing it and I've got diminished hearing, you must really be enjoying it. Now we know where it's coming from. We'll blame you. You're the
Yeah,
guest.
that's fine. I'm hearing it and I'm going, is there a car parked outside my studio?
Well, when you get
That
like me,
Alexa.
Fred, and you're duly diagnosed, sometimes it's
So,
in your head.
so Scott, before we end this, because we're at that time, I wanted to ask, beyond what you're doing for your son and your son's thoughts, what does Brady do to enjoy her life?
So you say you say it may not. We'll talk about that too. That it's okay to have it in your head. It's what you do with it, what you let it do to you, because you can't change what's happened, unfortunately. And my new book, have you seen the title of my new book? You're not God. That job is taken. I'm sending a copy. I got one. I'm sending it to President Trump tomorrow. I'm hoping he'll pass it to somebody who, maybe the Secret Service. It'll be fun. I'll look forward to that. Anyway, it was so great listening to you, and all right, and you know your job. You got to email me, and you have to say I need help, and then I'm in.
Well, that's very nice of you, Scott. So, in closing, I want to thank you for coming on. I won't use the word brave or anything. I think you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing as Jack's parent to keep his memory alive, not only keep his memory alive, but to keep that website alive, to keep his art alive, to keep his mission alive. It is a good thing you're doing, whether or not it's where you want it to be or not. You're doing your best, and that's important. I think Scott's offer is very sweet. It's the sweetest I've ever seen him be. So I don't know what you did to him. He's usually yelling at me or getting mad at me, but
It's
this
Rosh
happens.
Hashanah. It's a day of
Yeah,
yeah.
but
If we had done this tomorrow or yesterday, who knows?
that's right. So Scott, before we go, Scott, you want to give your phone number?
I do. Area code 619-993-2738. I dare you to call me, text me. Let's have a conversation. Let's see if we can help each other, and let's find a way to get smarter, be smarter, and know that the government's not going to fix this. We're going to have to. We're going to have to.
Yep. Okay. Well, that's going to be it, Scott. That's all we got. Everybody go out and buy Scott's book. The links are below. If you want to visit Happy Jack, the link will be below in the notes. If you want to contact any of us, just DM us, whatever you got to do. We're here to help you. And this is your crisis coach. I'm Fred Carroll. That's Scott H. Silverman. And that's Brady.